Hi, and thanks for joining the SJ Child Show. The SJ Child Show brings value to families through education and resources. But the SJ Child Show isn't just about me, it's about us as a community. Join me as we help educate and support our community, help bring kindness and love and inclusion to all. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and watch. I really appreciate all the support from all of the viewers and listeners, and I just want to let you know I want you to join me on this journey. Come and follow my social media, and let's do this together. Enjoy the show. Introducing Autism Vehicle Home Safety Kits, Emergency Responder, alert stickers, personal profiles with autism needs and a communication board, masks and earplugs, keeping families and emergency responders educated and safe. Get yours today at sjchilds.org. Helping autism families impact their child's developmental milestones through home relocation, community resources, and home designs. For every 3 homes Natalie Castro sells, she funds and designs a sensory room for a community center servicing individuals with autism. She volunteers to coach law enforcement, first responders, and ER nurses how to have a positive experience for individuals on the autism spectrum. Hi, and welcome to the SJ Child Show. I'm your host, SJ Childs, and today I have a special guest, AnnaLaura Brown. She is a city neighbor, if you will, just not too far from myself. We're going to have a really great conversation today about autism and a business and services that she provides in the community. And so, yeah, without further ado, hello. So nice to have you today.
Yeah, sure. Of course. I'm happy to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you and find out more about what you offer and kind of more about yourself. So let's get started at the very best place, and that's at the beginning. So tell us what got you started on this journey.
So a lot of things got me started on the journey. So I was one of those, I don't know, a little unusual, I guess, if you will. And I talk about this in the very beginning of my self-published Amazon book that I just wrote pretty recently, which is this right here. I have the cover so anybody watching on YouTube can see it. A Spectrum of Miracles, Hope and Healing for Parents of Children with Autism. So this is my personal story. And I actually almost died at Primary Children's Hospital at 17 months old. And from a really super rare illness that typically it takes about 40% of people that get it die from it. So it's pretty scary. And autism does not really run in my family at all. In fact, I was the only one for a long, long time on the autism spectrum until my sister married a guy and her husband has a brother who's pretty severely autistic, and then they have a son now who's basically like Asperger's. So now I have kind of so now we have some of that genetic autism in that side of the family. But for a while, I was really the only one on the spectrum in my family. And I was diagnosed also really young at age 5 in the early 80s, which was really unusual. But it was because I had that sickness. The doctors had all told my parents to watch out for anything weird, because one of the things that happened is I was in a coma for 3 or 4 days, and it caused some pretty severe brain damage. And that was likely how I got a lot of my autism symptoms. So
isn't that so interesting? There's a book I'm trying to remember the author of, but maybe it was even just a video I was watching, but he was talking about the effects of trauma versus genetic autism, and how those traumatic brain injuries can also cause those autism symptoms and have those lifelong effects as well. So that is so interesting to be able to kind of have an anecdotal case and, to really look at and say, okay, this is what this looks like as well. Tell us about some of the struggles. I mean, 5, that's great that you were able to get a diagnosis that young, especially for girls. It's something grossly overlooked in girls, right? What kind of support system were you able to get back then?
So I was, originally diagnosed by a psychologist, like an educational psychologist who, deals with diagnosing people with a lot of different disabilities, ADD, ADHD, autism, all that kind of thing. And back then, there wasn't, I wouldn't say I was pretty lucky because, well, there wasn't a ton of support out there and it was pretty unusual. And I think at the time the doctor was kind of like, well, she's got like a lot of the like autism symptoms, but the spectrum wasn't really a thing back then.
Yeah.
But he's like, but she's kind of higher functioning because she's pretty verbal and everything else. So we're kind of not really sure what to call this, It's kind of a little bit unusual, but my mom was really determined to do the best job she possibly could. And I talk about in the book how I feel like my mom was literally like a superwoman because I was also the first of 8 kids.
Whoa.
And my mom was pregnant when I got sick, and my little sister is only 20 months younger than me. So she was born 3 months after I almost died. Mm-hmm. So my mom had, and then pretty much a new baby every 2 years with a 4-year gap in between 6 and 7. But it was like, and I was 16 when number 8 was born. So my mom was raising all these kids and trying to take me to and from doctor's appointments and all kinds of stuff like that. And,
she sounds like a superwoman.
She was really amazing. She really did her homework. She researched. She sent me to several different therapists. I remember going even to a couple of other evaluations with some other people that did, various kinds of therapies and modalities, things like that. And my grandparents owned and operated a private school. They've since passed on, and my mom actually still works there, and one of my sisters is a 5th grade teacher there.
Wonderful.
But so I was really lucky in the education aspect, and I talk about that in my book too, that most people don't have the benefit of having that or coming from a family of teachers and things like that. Mm-hmm. So because I come from a family of teachers and education, and my grandparents ran this school, I was able to get a lot more accommodations at school than what is typical,
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad. I mean, that's wonderful that you had that available to you and that support and everything. It just goes to show how successful and, what you can bring into your life as an adult. Looking forward into, kind of graduating or college, what did that look like for you as you got a little bit older?
So as I got a little bit older, it was always challenging. And so when I was really young, and I talk about this in the book too, but I wasn't able to go to a full school day until 6th grade because I had so many stemming behavior issues and social issues and doctor's appointments, things like that and stuff. And I just couldn't make it through a full school day. So I only went to school half day, and then my mom kind of tried to homeschool me up through 6th grade.
Yeah.
But then once I got to 6th grade, for some reason, that was kind of the turning point in my life where I started getting better and started kind of becoming, I guess, things started getting a little bit better after 6th grade.
Yeah.
And
maybe more self-awareness.
More self-awareness, I think, a little bit. Junior high was still really rough, but is junior high really that great for anybody?
No.
You don't need autism to have junior high.
Yeah, seriously, right? No, that's the truth.
Yeah. So
I just had a lady tell me, if you ever homeschool your kid, do it that's the time period you do it. Take them out for middle school.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. But then, high school was fine. I had 3 really good friends that I hung out with, and so high school's fine, but I wasn't the best star student, if you will. I graduated with like a 3.2, so it wasn't like terrible, but it wasn't like I wasn't like your 4.0 student or your student with really amazing grades. So because of that, I was somewhat limited college-wise. I couldn't get into some of the big top schools. So I started out at a 2-year college and then transferred to the University of Utah. So that's where I ultimately ended up graduating from.
Oh, that's great. And what did you get a degree in there?
So I majored in French at the University of Utah.
Oh, that's incredible. Wow. And have you used your skills and traveling and gone to France?
I have. I actually went on study abroad to France as a student.
Wow.
And actually also went to study abroad to Chile as well, because I actually got a crazy idea to minor in Spanish. I
Okay.
actually was going to minor in business, but then you have to actually take calculus for even a business minor. And I tried to enroll and I was going to flunk.
Yeah, dang
I
it.
just couldn't do it. The math. Some people get that math genius. Like my sister's boy has this math genius where he's like a
DJ.
walking calculator. You can say to him,
Yes.
well, hey, Caleb, what's 20 times 30? And he'll tell you like immediately, or what's all this
Exactly.
division? And, that is not me.
Yeah. No, isn't that interesting, the scope of the spectrum of how,
Yeah.
different but what talents each person brings, in their
For
own
sure.
way. I love that. I love that.
So anyhow, I was at this point, I had studied French for a lot of years, had already actually been to France at this point a couple times. And so I actually was pretty close to fluent at this point and was majoring in French. But I had never really taken Spanish. And I decided to jump in and do a Spanish minor. So I was taking advanced French literature courses at the same time I was in Spanish 1010 and Spanish 1020, the beginning level Spanish. And so I ended up going to Chile on study abroad as well, because it was really the only way to get all those credits, because you still have to go to the 4,000s in Spanish just to even do a minor. So
wow.
Yeah, so I did both of those study abroad. So that was good. And I have used the French some. I mean, I do some. Occasionally I've done some tutoring, that kind of thing.
Nice. Yeah.
Depending, I'm on a couple sites online and occasionally people will reach out to me and want tutoring. I'm not currently doing any, but, most recently I actually worked with a student who had enrolled in the intensive French 2010 and 2020 at the U, and she was like, this was almost too much. And so I was working with her, helping her make sure she passed her classes so she could graduate.
That's great. Oh, that's wonderful. Those are wonderful services to offer. And I mean, that's amazing. Languages are incredible, and to be versed in more than one, good for you.
For sure. And then as far as my job goes, I do use it occasionally because I work with US and Canada in the small and medium business sector with their tech, specifically with their Google accounts, and we get assigned accounts that are in Quebec, and some of those Quebecois people don't speak English that great.
Yes.
And so I definitely do end up on the phone in French sometimes for my work. So
that's wonderful. I was just on Zoom with I'm trying to think of where he's at. He's in Canada. I was in Canada this morning too.
Yeah.
It's so exciting. You can do stuff like that. Oh, I love it. I just love it.
Sure.
Well, that's wonderful. So when you got into the workforce, what did that look like? And what kind of accommodations did you find or had to provide yourself with?
Well,
right?
So I think the biggest challenge was in getting really clear on career-wise. I think anyway, I want to say come full circle to the way that I feel like career, I think I found my niche. I think I really thrive in a lot of sales environments. I really like, the ability of being able to earn commissions and have, the potential to earn above and beyond just a base salary by being able to sell products and things that I believe in and helping people out in that way. But I started off pretty rough, honestly. I had at the 2-year college I had attended before I went to the University of Utah, I had done a 2-year accounting degree in addition to like my general ed. And I started off as an accounts payable, it was accounts payable and payroll clerk, and got fired after 3 months because I was terrible and made way too many mistakes. So it was like, that didn't go super well. And, in between the here and the now, I've had quite a few jobs. I was fired pretty tragically from one other job too. So, it hasn't always been an easy route.
Yeah.
I find, that nowadays, most people, especially at my work, some of them might kind of catch in a little bit, but most of them don't even know I'm on the spectrum because it's not something I like tell people.
Okay, yeah. Definitely.
I figure if they figure it out or they need to know, I'll tell them. But,
yeah.
And now that I work from home too, most of my work, it's all over the computer and it's all digitally. So I'm not even around them in person. So they,
Yeah. Do you like that better? Is that
I do actually in a lot of ways. Yeah.
I bet. What type of, as an adult now, what type of like stimming and things do you find? I'm always like, okay, stop bouncing your leg, husband. Stop, you know.
Yeah. My biggest problem was, so as a child, I would almost feel like my hands would get kind of sandpapery, if that makes any sense. And so as a child, I was like, like licking the hands and like just stimming and stuff. And my mom was constantly like, sit on your hands, don't do that.
Oh, wow.
And so as an adult, I always, I use like a lot of lotions to try to make sure my hands don't feel that way as much. And then I just, will even still sit on my hands sometimes if I have to, just to make sure that I don't do that.
Yeah.
But that definitely, there's like that tendency to want to like, and then sometimes maybe a little bit more talking with my hands than what is normal. But I find that that's, when I was younger, especially too, I used to do a lot of talking with the hands, and I feel like that wasn't as much accepted. I feel like now that's become more of a thing.
Yeah, definitely.
I think more people just kind of do that. And in France, the French actually talk with their hands a lot too.
There you go.
That's kind of a cultural thing. They just do it a lot. So it's not seen as being really that abnormal.
And isn't that interesting? Did you find in the French culture that you were maybe not as eclectic as may have seen in America, or vice versa, or anything like that? Were there?
I would say to some degree. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I bet that too. My son wants to go to Japan, and I don't know if he's fluent in Japanese, but he knows how to read and write and speak Japanese.
Oh, wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. He's on 109 languages. 109.
That he has studied, or that he has
memorized. He has memorized 109. And I don't think that, with DJ, and you met him the other night, so that was great because you can reference who I'm talking about. But we realized when he was 3 that he was diagnosed at 16 months, and then when he was 3, I realized that he had a photographic memory. He was reading at 1 and writing at 2, and I had kind of been in play. I had been giving him Your Baby Can Read program. Since he was an infant, just because I was interested in education and I wanted to give my kid a head start, and of course, not knowing he was going to be on the spectrum, of course. But then when he was 3, he recreated in cursive and block letters, like a t-shirt his grandma had worn about a week earlier. And that's when I recognized that what it was. And so up till this date, he's just been sponge, it's like, he's like just a sponge. Like you said, it's like a human calculator. He does like, when he was 8, he was doing like 10th grade math. He's 11 now. I can't even tell you what possibly grade math he doth. I can't even understand. Me and math, we don't get along. No. I'm the wordsmith, not the MATH. That's as far as math goes for me.
There you go.
I'll stick with spelling math, thank you.
Yeah.
But
and I actually had a photographic memory as a child too, which I think is actually pretty common. The biggest thing I remember is I think this was not the initial kindergarten one. I think because my parents had me evaluated 3 times. They took me again in 4th grade and again in 9th grade to get more official evaluations. And I think this was the 4th grade one, if I remember right. And I remember sitting down, and I remember the lady who was like an assistant to the doctor, because the doctor was actually a man. And I remember her coming in the room, and I remember her sitting there telling me this whole story that was probably like a 3 to 5 minute long story. And I told her back the whole thing word for word without missing a single word. And I remember her just being like,
in awe, I'm sure. It's incredible. And once he realized that Google Translate was a thing, he just started going in and like putting it to the test, I guess.
Well, he's one up to me on that one.
I've never met a human in my entire life that's like him. That's what got me into, wanting to be so passionate about autism and celebrating how I was seeing it unfold through my family members. My husband was diagnosed about 5 years ago, so when he was in his late 30s. And I think a lot of things just kind of really made sense. And it just like it clicked, all of this like how was I always, and I mean, for lack of better terms, always, smarter than everyone and just better at mastering things than everyone and all of the, kind of, which good for him. That's what attracted me to him, right? Because he was just like a boss and everything. And so, yeah, it's incredible though, now being able to say, okay, now I see how their sleep cycles match up. I see how their eating habits are like. I see, and it's so much easier than trying to be like forcing your child to be like you if perhaps you're neurotypical or, I just see it so much differently now. And we completely give grace and like flexibility to our kids to kind of show us the way they need to be raised, and not in the way that it's like, what was that book? What, Lord of the Flies? Yeah, not like that. But at the same time, we don't have societal expectations on them that don't fit the parameters of their personalities. So it's been
well, I think your kids are going to do something really amazing.
I think so. I know they will, crazy. And my daughter, who was, just diagnosed last week or a couple weeks ago, she's already a published illustrator. She's already has an illustrated book published, and just they're so talented. I love it. I just
that's
love
amazing.
It.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, 109 languages. Wow.
I'm gonna have to pull him in here when we're done, and he can tell you some of the things. Well, I think right now, like we heard yesterday, the periodic table is really heavy on his mind, and those are really hard for him to switch. Once he has that really that interest that he is overwhelmed with, I would say. Yeah. In fact, yesterday we heard a lot of periodic table jokes, and those are sodium funny. Like that.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. That's probably my husband's gonna be like, no, you shouldn't have, but that's okay. Well, we're gonna take just a tiny little 5-second break for our new sponsor coming up. So hold on and we'll be right back. And thanks to you, old Sarah, for giving us that message, and on to new Sarah with the rest of our story today. So thank you so much again for being here, Anna. It's great. This is a great conversation. Tell us a little bit about the company and solopreneur, as you had put it, kind of what you're doing now as a business for yourself and for the community.
For sure. Yeah. So like I've mentioned already, I published my book, and one of the projects I'm working on, is getting my story out there more by sharing my book, that kind of thing. And one of the things that's unique besides having my story is at the end of each chapter, I share a recipe that is both gluten-free and casein-free, because when I was younger, that was another thing my mom did, was put me on the gluten-free, casein-free diet. So I share recipes based on things that my mom used to make that, are gluten-free, casein-free, some of my favorite recipes. And then I also share an essential oil blend as well of some of my favorites that I feel like have really helped me. I didn't know about, my parents didn't know about, we didn't use essential oils when I was young. I've been in them myself for about 10 years now. And so, one thing besides, just getting my story out there is I'm passionate about helping parents learn how, the impact that food has on their kids, and how helping their kids eat healthier. Now, whether or not it's just gluten-free, casein-free, doesn't have to be that route, but, avoiding things like the processed foods, the processed sugars, the dyes, and then the role, of course, that essential oils can help with a lot of kids on the spectrum, because they can actually be really amazing.
What's your top 3 that you've found, and kind of what do they offer for you?
I would say my top 3, that's tough. I would say frankincense is a good one. Frankincense is really good for a lot of like your brain health. It's also known as like an anti-aging one. So it's in like a lot of skincare things, but it's also good for, like autoimmune, your nerves, that kind of thing too. That's really good. Another one I would say would be copaiba, which sometimes pronounced copaiba. Actually comes from the Amazon in Brazil, and it's what is considered a cannabinoid. So a lot of people, when they think of cannabinoids, they think of CBD and hemp and, the THC and all that kind of stuff. But copaiba is an essential oil that actually can offer a lot of those same health benefits, but without the THC, so it can't get you high, you can't test negative for a drug test, and can be really good, for like helping soothe minor aches and pains and
anti-inflammation and things.
Anti-inflammation, exactly, that kind of thing. And then another one that's probably one of my favorite ones is a doTERRA Balance, which is a blend specifically created by doTERRA that is more of like your woodsy, earthy.
Okay.
It's also known as the grounding blend, though.
Nice.
So it's used to help create a sense of feeling of calm and groundingness.
Yeah. As a former massage therapist, I appreciate essential oils and the amazing properties and things that they can do for people, healing. Random thing, but I had a woman that had scoliosis really, really bad. And she was in her 60s, late 60s, so quite an older woman. And when we would use the thyme and oregano, it would literally straighten her spine for the time through the massage. And of course that it's not a lasting effect, but it would give her those few moments to take a deep breath, to have that relaxation, to get that sense of, straightened out basically, and kind of getting a good stretch and everything. And when I saw that happen the first time, I mean, you can't even understand until you really see the effects and feel the effects of how healing.
Well, and that's interesting because I never even thought of thyme and oregano with a massage.
Yeah, I know.
Thyme and oregano to me is like
that?
what you use for more like, you're coming down with a cold or some kind of a bug or infection of some kind, and you're trying to stem it off and make it so that you don't totally collapse and become severely ill.
Yeah, I worked for a chiropractor, and he was well versed in, essential oils and their properties and healing technique, whatever, I guess, qualities. There you go. And so I learned so much in that time frame, and kind of hopefully pass it on to my family. It's like sometimes you learn something and it's great for you, but then you get so busy in your life that you don't live it every day. And then you're like, oh yeah, I remember that was good for me and I should be doing that.
For sure. Well, and one of the things I like about Balance too, besides it being this grounding, kind of this woodsy, is that it doesn't have a really strong smell. So the challenge you have is sometimes some kids on the spectrum they have a hard time with anything that has really a big, strong smell. Mm-hmm. Personally, they don't really bother me, but I know they do bother some kids. And so Balance can be a good one because it doesn't have this overpowering smell like some essential oils can have.
That's nice. That's really nice. I love that. What other types of services do you have, like a website where you offer coaching for families or things like that? What I
do? I have my blog where I blog, about autism, but also about autoimmunity as well. I've had my own challenges with thyroid issues and that kind of thing. So I talk about autoimmunity on my blog as well. And it's just my name. So it's AnnaLauraBrown.com.
Wonderful.
I do offer some coaching. My approach, at this point in time, I'm really focusing more on, like this book and like some ebooks. Probably will be developing an online course at some point in time. The one-on-one coaching is always available if parents really are interested in that. But I find, that sometimes the self-guided works a little bit better for parents.
Well, and I love that about blogs and podcasts and things like that, is because it's so much information and you can learn so much through somebody else's experiences. And it's always trial and error. You're right. Your whole life is trial and error.
Absolutely.
You got to just see what works. But I love the fact that the book has the gluten casein free, because our kiddos, both when they were younger, I guess our son still is all of those things, but he doesn't eat anything with any of those things in them. So that doesn't matter. But my daughter, she's it's almost like she got used. Well, I don't even know how to say it. We just started having little things at a time, and then the gluten didn't bother her anymore. So maybe it was kind of as she was developing in her stomach and things like that, then it was a big problem. But then we found out later she didn't have the same effects anymore on her. I think it was when we had gone to like a dinner or a birthday thing, and she had never had like a cupcake or something, a donut or something. And I was just like, okay, people are like, just let her try it. But as you can probably understand.
Yeah.
Why make your kids suffer?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So with me, like I was on it for, probably about 3 or 4 years when I was younger, and it seemed to really help. My mom also made a lot of homemade food. She didn't service a lot of processed food. Like when she did do gluten, it was like homemade wheat bread that my mom actually baked herself.
There you go.
And things like that. And so, I got off of it after a few years, and then as an adult started having a bunch of digestive and allergy issues. And so I actually just barely tried sourdough bread last week for the first time after 8 years of being really strictly gluten-free.
Wow.
And I find that I think the sourdough I do okay with, but I find that, a lot of the other sources of gluten, especially the gluten, I just don't do super well with.
Yeah.
I have to be careful with a lot of cheese and milk and yogurt, like a lot of the dairy products too, because it basically just makes my sinuses and things swell up and stuff like that. So I mostly stick with butter and then maybe some like fermented or raw dairy products, but I don't do a ton of dairy either, even as an adult. I find that too much of that really causes me, and gluten will cause things like brain fog and, make me have a hard time with focus and concentration and other things too. So
so stick away from that. We don't need that. We already have Monday. We don't need those other things.
For sure.
Well, I'm so glad that we were able to get together today. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm just really honored to have you on here. Hold up your book again so we can get another great picture of that.
Take a look at it. And if people go to my blog, they can opt in and read the first 10 pages or so, which is about the first chapter. Tells my story of how I almost died. It's pretty intriguing.
No, that's wonderful. We'll definitely get all the links to that in the description and up on the screen. And get a good promotion out there for you on that book. And of course, we have our wonderful autism group who are so supportive, and will, put them a special boost in there for them to do it. So.
Awesome. Cool. That would be great. Yeah, I would love to be able to help them out in any way that I possibly can. Because, I'm sure the parents are out there, they're always wondering, and I feel like I have a little bit of a unique story, really a lot of a unique story.
Right?
A
whole book's worth, in fact. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was wonderful to connect with you, and we will definitely be in touch.
Okay, awesome. Sounds good, Sarah.
Thanks.
The SJ Child Show, produced by sjchildsllc. Thanks to all my viewers and listeners for your continued love and support. And thank you to the guests of the SJ Child Show. It's been an honor to have you on the show. Thank you to everyone who continues to support me. Go to my social media and let's build this community together through kindness, compassion, and education for others.